Welcome everyone to another Trail Talk video, here with Polaris of course. My name is Evan and once again, Eric is here as well. Per usual, the man behind the camera. We are here at yet another location on our secret property. Not so secret. You can see we're actually on one of the trails that comes through here. There's trails all over these woods. Little bit of mud still. We're in Minnesota, they're still thawing, so we can't ride them yet, but soon enough, you will see them. So the last two videos we talked about what you need to know about a side-by-side, about an ATV, and today the topic is, if you just bought one, what do you need to do to set them up and break them in before the first ride? So let's jump right in. So first up, for setting up your vehicle, the first thing we're going to talk about, very technical term, ergonomics here, basically being comfortable in the vehicle. So I almost got into it prematurely here. First thing you want to see, the seats, obviously. We all know what these are. Very common and should be very familiar. There is a seat slider, right, on the bottom of this. So let me jump in so you can go move it forward. I don't even know if I can go all the way forward because of my knees here. Whatever is comfortable for you, and remember, your feet definitely need to reach the controls, the side and then both of the pedals. So what I do, because I'm tall, I scoot it all the way to the back and I click it in. So that's done. One thing to note on the seats, on some of our vehicles, like on a RZR Pro XP, you can tilt the seat. And there's three different options. So on a general, this is the default setting, but you could have a more, I guess, leaned back position on a RZR Pro XP, or you could sit completely upright depending on the kind of driving style that you like. But on a general, which, gosh, these have the most comfy seats, this is the tilt, and then you have the seat slider. So back in here, and I know I'm good because I'm comfortable and I can reach the pedals. The next thing is the steering wheel, the steering position. So on all of our vehicles, almost all of our vehicles with a steering wheel, there is obviously, boop, 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 this lever. So you can kind of choose, and the whole gauge here, if you look, Eric, it tilts with it. So the whole thing, it kind of stays exactly so your eyes can still see. Anyway, some people like to have the wheel kind of down and like kind of just tucked and their elbows are nice and tight, which I definitely like. But on a vehicle like this, my legs get in the way, so I kind of come up a little bit. Some people like it all, up a lot and just, whatever feels comfortable. Again, it really just comes down to comfortability in the machine and making sure both hands can access all the controls. So like if you had your seat too far back and you couldn't reach the levers or the switches, that wouldn't be a good thing. So make sure you can reach everything and you're comfortable. One more thing to note, the RZR Pro XP is so cool. On a RZR Pro XP steering wheel, there's a lever that you release and the wheel telescopes like infinitely wherever you want it, in, out, up, or wherever. That is the most like perfect tuning you can get on a wheel. Otherwise, all of our new steering racks, the position is very nice. It's very nice. This is usually where I put mine, right here. Last thing on a vehicle here, kind of the third component, is the seat belt, or I know some of you will have potentially a 5, 6 point, 4 point, whatever harness that comes over both sides of the seat. If you have a 3-point seat belt, it's, this should be nothing new. It goes all the way down there and you just hold it. You do have, for adjustment, these different clicker or like stations. What do I call these, Eric? Settings, right? So you can move it around. My pro tip, let me get it all the way to the top. I'm a giraffe, right?
What do you mean by that?
I'm very tall.
Oh, okay.
I'm 6'5".
As I look up at you.
Therefore, what do you mean by that?
I'm 6 foot and I'm looking up.
Yes. I always put mine all the way to the top, just because if it's too low, obviously, it like pulls on your shoulder or whatever. Other people don't have that problem. But one thing that people like to ask too is, who can fit in the rear seat? We actually design our machines so that a range of people can sit in the back, but primarily still be able to fit an adult in the back seat as well. So you really can take 4 adults out there. As stated, I am tall, and have long legs. So this is a great test because I'm probably one of the, I'm not the tallest, I'm not claiming tallest person on earth, but I'm one of the taller people on earth, which makes buying jeans really fun. But you can see here, so I'm just kind of chilling in the back. My knees aren't, I'm just barely scraping this one, but this is rubber. This is soft touch. Left knee, not hitting anything, and I'm just sitting flat. I can reach the grab bar, no problem. I can just, oh, here. I'm just in the back. 6'5", not sharing my weight publicly yet. Perfectly fitting in the back here, no problem at all. So, let me know in the comments, what's the biggest person you've had in the rear of your vehicle? Maybe not. On an ATV, it's very simple. You have the seat from here to here, and you can just pick, like I wouldn't sit like this. I don't even know why I started off sitting like that. You have the seat and you basically just sit like if you had, I'm a giraffe, as I said. I don't know someone who would sit here, but if this was comfortable and you could reach the controls, good to go. I'm usually in the middle. I like to have my feet a little further forward and where my heels kind of sit on this little bit of like extra grippier pad area and kind of lifts my heels up. It's just the most confident position for me and allows me to turn the handlebars without interfering with my chest or my stomach or whatever. So an ATV, it's much simpler. You just kind of sit where it feels comfortable and where you can, of course, reach all the controls. Stowing gear properly, next item after, once you have the vehicle set up for all the people. So if you're bringing gear, the rule of thumb is nothing should be loose in the vehicle. Obviously, as these are going off-road, the off-road is not a smooth road most of the time. And so any type of, undulation or whatever, going up a hill, down a hill, you don't want stuff rolling or getting, loose in the cab. Like, here, that sitting on the hood, you would never want that. Obviously, we're not driving, but loose helmet in the back, obviously you should be wearing it anyway, not a good idea. You want to tie this stuff down. So the best thing to do, if you have, say, bags or a cooler or something, if you can put stuff in the rear box, that's really the best area because it can obviously hold a lot of stuff. There's different racks that you can put here. There's, you'll see all these on the side of the bed here. All these holes are lock and ride, which we have just the things you drop in, quick release, little cam tabs that just flip over. You can put boxes in here, coolers in here, and that's awesome because boxes, you could drop a whole bag in there and just shut the box and it's retained. A pro tip for coolers, a lot of people put their coolers back here, and I've seen people, obviously you want to ratchet strap the cooler down. You do not want a loose cooler. But what I recommend is you open the cooler and ratchet strap it down open, and then you can close the cooler over the straps so that you don't have to unstrap it every time you want to drink. Just makes it a lot easier to use and get in. It's not possible with every cooler, so just kind of keep that in mind. The coolers we sell, there's tons of coolers that work that way. Ratchet strap it down open and then close the cooler so it's still accessible. Another pro tip that I like and have picked up from others over time is, let's say I'm just riding alone, not going too far. Maybe I'm just, at a trail system with some friends or family, whatever. If I just have a backpack, I will just put the backpack next to me and I'll flip it around so the straps are facing out. And then I literally take the seat belt, feed it through both the shoulder straps, and I just belt my backpack right next to me. It works really well. You got two of the straps going through the backpack, holds it down really nice. Obviously the seatbelt will still lock, all that good stuff. Make sure though, everything is retained and secured in the vehicle. Spare tires, even small things like keys, don't just drop those in a cup holder. And even drinks, like you want to make sure you're really not just keeping things that are loose around the vehicle. Put them in the different storage areas. We got a ton of spots, right? Keep everything retained. Over on the ATV, storage, gear. Nothing too crazy or different. I mean, once again, we showed this in an earlier video. You have this awesome spot up front where you can put stuff in here. You can see there's a rubber grommet around, so it is water resistant, dust resistant. You can put stuff in there like the toolkit that comes with every vehicle. You know, you wouldn't want that obviously loose. You can retain it right in here, good to go. Something on the top, again, these are all metal. You can ratchet strap down, tie down, but you can certainly secure things here. Same thing on the rear of the vehicle. All these holes, tons of areas, tons of crevices to get ratchet straps in. Again, all metal, super easy to store stuff. Once again, make sure everything is retained and nothing is loose. Next thing, suspension setup. Now, we can actually start here. On a vehicle like an ATV or one that might have these sack shocks on them, there very well may be one setting, and that'll work just fine for the vehicle that it's intended on. So this one, suspension, good to go. On a vehicle like a General XP, which is right here, or a Razor, or a variety of different machines, there's certainly ATVs that have suspension like this as well. Join me down in the wheel well. Right here, we have a shock assembly, of course. On the reservoir here, which these could be in some different spots, but on the reservoir, at the very top, can you see my fingers?
Yes. Yep.
Everything's black here. You can read, there's a sticker here that I'll read it to you, but it says hard clockwise, soft counterclockwise. And basically up here, I have this clicker. Can you hear it?
Yep.
That is clicking. Now, I forget the exact amount. It varies based on if it's Fox or Walker Evans, but there's like 14 to 20 positions of tuning that you can do. So a lot of tuning. Basically what you want to think about with suspension, and this is like the most simple way that I understand suspension. We'll do something more involved in the future. Like I said, there's hard or firm or soft or more plush suspension. If you want your machine to be like really smooth, if you're going over small bumps and you want to soak them up as much as possible, if you're just kind of cruising around even, definitely set up your suspension as soft as you can. Conversely, if you're going to be doing a little bit more spirited driving or want better bottom out resistance or want a little firmer, like flatter feeling in the corners, a lot of people say, you want to have firmer suspension. So you'd want to dial up the compression. Basically what this does is it's just allowing, so inside here there's a bunch of oil that's flowing through all these channels, and that's how it's slowing the compression down when the vehicle, you know, the tire's moving. You're changing how fast the oil can go. So if you're softening the suspension, you're allowing the oil to travel very freely. If you're firming the suspension, you're closing those channels down so it's harder for the oil to pass, but it means it's harder for the suspension to compress. The absolute conundrum with suspension is the pros and cons of both going more comfortable and plush or firmer and more performance-based. Because if you go too firm, small bumps will be very, they'll feel like chatter, some people like to say, or they'll be a little bit bumpier than you might want. However, if you go too soft, sometimes in the corners, you might feel a little bit more weight transfer, and it might feel almost too plush compared to what you might want in a corner. So the real magic is getting that right setting for where you feel like you have a good comfortable ride, but also a nice performing ride as well. I would recommend, let's say if there's 14 clickers, just start in the middle on all of them, go to 7, like turn it all the way one way and click 7 back. Again, read your owner's manual, it'll tell you the specifics. Start in the middle and just see what your thoughts are. You want to soften it a little bit, make it a little firmer depending on where you're riding. If you have a Razor, which has our DYNAMIX technology on it, DYNAMIX active suspension, it is, instead of you as a person turning that clicker, it is electronically controlling all of the shocks while you're driving, and you don't have to do anything. If you want it comfortable, its brain, it like has a brain in this area, its brain makes it comfortable. If you want to have more firm suspension in a corner, or whenever you might, if you're going at higher speeds, you want firmer suspension, it will actually give the shock a firmer suspension. So I'm not going way into DYNAMIX. There's some base settings, there's some other stuff you can do. We probably need to do a whole video on DYNAMIX, but that is the very simple breakdown of how you might want to set up your suspension on a vehicle. PSI and tire pressure. Honestly, you can really run it at the factory ranges, and if you're a set it and forget it type of person, they'll work on pretty much every type of terrain really well. Front tire pressures, I mean, read your owner's manual for specifics, but they usually range anywhere from 10 to 16-ish PSI, and then on the rears, normally they're ranging from 14 to 22 PSI. The rear usually has a little bit more because the engine is heavy and is sitting over the rear wheels, or also if you have a dump box, there could be more weight there as well. Razors normally have equivalent pressure, so like 16, 16, or whatever it might be. There are some considerations where if you're in a more sandy environment or a muddy environment where things can get a little more slick or it's softer, airing down a few PSI definitely helps, as it basically gives you a wider footprint as the tire, you know, kind of spreads out as you let a little bit of air out. Again, make sure you're reading the owner's manual and you know the lowest range that your tires are allowed to go to. They will tell you per each vehicle, but that helps in sand and mud, etc. I mentioned in an earlier video about rock crawling. A lot of people typically, I think, just due to that knowledge and wanting more traction, will lower tire pressures in rock crawling. I've learned from some pretty smart people on the rocks, the Guthries who race King of the Hammers, they actually usually run a near factory tire pressure in King of the Hammers, mainly because if you get a lot of grab on a rock, you have a lot of force that is stopping very quickly because rocks win every time. And so they actually use a higher tire pressure so it will actually just not spin more, but it's a little bit easier on the drive components, and then the compound can heat up and can still end up getting sticky and pull you over. So that's tire pressure for these vehicles. Again, I'd recommend running the factory, again, middle settings and testing what you like. Higher tire pressures are usually if you're trying to avoid pinch flats. You can actually also pinch flat if it's too low, but there's certain situations in some hard pack and desert where you may want to run higher tire pressures as well. Do your own research, do your own testing, see what you like, start at the factory settings and go from there, I would say. Next thing we're gonna talk about for those tires, if you wanna come around and see the switch here, Eric, is what drivetrain setup do you wanna run? So this switch right here is a great switch. Here, I'll switch sides with you. Of course, you have all-wheel drive at the top. That means, and that's our true on-demand all-wheel drive system. So that means every tire is going to be pulling if you need it to. It will actually bias when it doesn't need it, the rear tires being in two-wheel drive, so you're a little bit more efficient with fuel, etc., whatever. But then if there is, and it varies per vehicle, so check your owner's manual, if there is a certain degree of slip, I like to think of it, broadly speaking, as like if you slip one nubbin, is that what these are? One tread unit, one unit of tread. If you usually slip like one tread or so, it will engage our all-wheel drive system at 100% engagement like that. So I recommend, you know, I've ridden a decent amount. I almost always ride all-wheel drive. I really like it. It has the fronts there in case you need them. You don't need to click anything. You could simply click that easy while you're riding and it'll put it in, but that's just my 2 cents. In the middle, you have the two wheels, see, because the two wheels are filled in. That means that 100% of the time, only ever, the two wheels in the back will be driving the vehicle. You can totally do that if you want to. It helps sometimes if you're turning really tightly, you can get a little bit tighter turn out of just having the two wheels going. So that is a consideration. I personally still like running all-wheel drive. Last setting here, which I'm super happy we have a general, because this bottom setting, if you can see this, Eric, only that white tire, that one tire is filled in. What that means, if we come back here, this is called turf mode. And in this case, only the rear right tire would be driving the vehicle. The reason that you would want to use that, because you might be like, why would I want one tire driving my awesome off-road vehicle? Well, if you're using this machine around a property or a cabin or a farm, specifically on lawn potentially, if you have both spinning, when you turn, the wheels are traveling different distances, and so one of those wheels is gonna pick up a little bit of material basically. Like if you look right here, I think this is from a different vehicle, maybe the ATV over there, but you're gonna leave a little bit more of a trail behind essentially if you have 2 or more wheels driving. So if you just need to go around your lawn, you don't need 2 wheels going. You don't need 4 wheels going. 1 wheel and tire is plenty to get you around your property, even still pull a trailer in some cases. So we really recommend turf mode if you're on a delicate surface like a beautifully kept lawn. I know the lawns are being kept beautiful and I'm a big fan of that. Next thing here, and we're actually gonna go over to the ATV. We're spending too much time over that way. Let's come over this way. Same thing again, tire pressures, it's the same exact situation. Drive modes, a little bit different here, I just want to showcase. So on an ATV, if you want to engage different drive modes, there is the 2x4 drive system, and then if you want all-wheel drive, boom, it's just a switch. I know some ATVs, some other competitors have systems where you have to like put it in park, I think, and then you press a button and then you press something else and or you put it in neutral. I can't remember exactly. I don't want to state it wrong. It's just really complicated. You can be driving this machine and just switch it right over to all-wheel drive. Or better yet, just keep it in all-wheel drive all the time. Like I said, it biases the rear wheels until you need the front. Super easy. Okay, drive modes. So this ATV doesn't have it, but usually right here on an ATV, note this beautiful cutout where we could have a switch. There would be an option for work, standard, and performance, a 3-position rocker. And that is basically changing how the engine and the throttle are operating so that if you were doing slower paced activities, like say you were working, maybe I was backing up to a trailer and I was gonna haul some wood around my property. It changes the throttle and the engine so that it's not quite as jumpy. And not that it's jumpy, but it gives you a little bit more control, so it's really smooth. You can make really precise movements with the vehicle. And if you want to dial it up a little bit, you can go to standard, and it adds a little bit more sharpness and snap, if you will. I don't even know if that makes sense, Eric. It's snappy throttle. And if you go all the way to performance, super go mode, of course it is gonna be the snappiest, I'm just sticking with that, the snappiest and the sharpest throttle that you could have. So you do have those options as well. Last piece, before we're gonna talk about something very special and near and dear to my heart, is lighting. So on an ATV right here, it's super easy. You have, they're labeled, right? This is nothing too technical. A picture of a light, you have off, you have the low beams, which put the lows on. I feel like I'm just reading the label, aren't I? And then you have a high, and a fun little blue indicator there that lets you know, hey, don't blind anyone on the trail if they're passing. So keep trail etiquette. But I recommend using low, even during the day, just because it's really not drawing any power and it lets other people see your machine. I will mention that later on. Highs are awesome. Obviously at nighttime you want them on anyway. So that is certainly a consideration. One thing that's awesome about a Sportsman, if you want to come up front, Eric. Yeah. So headlights, 2 of them. Great, awesome. But also the pod light. This is a beloved feature by Polaris ATV owners. We are primarily known for having this awesome pod light so that say if I'm going around a corner, I'm now casting light in a wider beam so I can see where I'm going and, well, where I'm going and also where I'm going to go. So it just allows you to ride a little bit later into the night with more confidence because you have more lighting. Honestly too, if you're working at night, you can create a larger work scene because you now have light in front of you over there. Really cool, people love these things. For a long time I was like, it's a pod light, right? What's the big deal? But you actually start using these, this is a legit home run for this machine. Did I just say that lights are a home run? Same thing over here, nothing too complicated. Again, lighting here, there's an off switch, off switch is the bottom, middle rocker is the low beams, once again. Great to have on even when it's daytime, just so people can see you, and then high beams as well. A very cool thing, come on over here, Eric. Come out front. Most of our machines that we're making that are new, and even some ATVs, have the actual coolest DRL lighting. I'm such a fan of these. Actually, wait, I think we call them accent lights or something like that. They're not technically DRLs, they're accent lights. Just such a cool part to this vehicle. Oh my God. If you can get the LED lighting, sometimes it's expensive, but swing for it if you can. If not, you're still gonna love it, but that is such a cool feature. Okay, enough about lighting and stuff. Let's talk about a question that I get asked when I'm at events or people know I work for Polaris more than any other question. How do I break in my belt? We're gonna tackle it right now. There's nothing about breaking in a belt that is crazy scientific. I get asked the question all the time though, but it is very, so important to do if you really wanna maximize your belt life. The goal of breaking in the belt, by the way, is basically the belt is going around. Can you kind of see this shape, Eric? Mm-hmm. So it's this, I want to say this is an oblong shape. I think that's correct. This oblong shape, the belt is going around. Inside there is a clutching system that is holding onto that belt, and that's how it is driving the belt. What we want to do in the break-in is make the angles on the outside of the belt match perfectly and happily with the angles on what are called the sheaves. Don't take notes, you don't need to remember that. But basically just the clutch that holds onto the belt, they're at some angles, and that's on purpose, and you want those angles to match up nicely. So how do we do that? Well, there's two options. And Eric, there might be a third pro tip Evan option that I would propose to the world. Option one is in low gear, okay, we're in low gear, drive 5 to 10 miles at varied RPMs. We actually have someone that might be breaking in a belt in the background right now. Low gear, 5 to 10 miles, varied RPMs, so don't hang out at the same RPM, but you can go up to 5, 6, 7,000 rotations per minute, and light to moderate throttle. Do not hammer on the gas first thing. I know you want to. This is probably the biggest pro tip. Just follow the break-in, because I'm the same way. I want to see what it can do. Break the belt in the right way, then have a ton of fun with the throttle or whatever you want to do. But that's option one. 5 to 10 miles in low, keep it varied, etc. Option two, in high gear, drive 50 miles. I don't have time for that. That's a long time. It's a long time to do 5 miles. But you can drive 50 miles in high gear, exact same thing. Light to moderate accelerations and throttle. Varied RPMs, don't hang out in the same spot. You don't want to develop a weird groove or anything. Up to 5, 6, 7K in terms of RPMs. Those are the two options we usually say. Here's my pro tip option that I have had amazing success with. Take option one and do it. 5 to 10 miles in low, etc. Then do the exact same thing after in high gear. So it's just another 5 to 10 miles. And again, light to moderate acceleration, all that good stuff, varied RPMs. If you do that, you're getting, and I'm just giving you my own opinion at this point, you're getting the proper break-in process from option one. Plus, I like to just think high gear is different because it's a different gear. So just do the same thing again, real quick and high. I know it's like, takes a long time to rack up 5 to 10 miles 2 times. I'm gonna be honest, I always have the best intention to go for 10 miles, ends up being like 7.5, right? You just can't do 10 miles. Do the 10 miles and you'll love it, but if you do that in low and you do it in high, I mean, I've had amazing success with maximizing belt life, and that's what I've been doing. I highly recommend it. Don't just go on the gas right away. Do the braking, and I promise it'll set you up for really good success. Okay, enough about belts. Let's cover a couple pre-ride checks that you should be doing each time, and we're getting pretty close, I promise. A lot of information, but we're almost wrapped up. Listen, watch the video again, take some notes. You guys are gonna have an awesome time riding if you follow this checklist. Next up, like I said, pre-ride checks. We're going back over here. We keep getting stuck over here. Okay, the first thing you're gonna wanna do, and again, this applies to both vehicles, right? So it still pay attention if you don't have an ATV. The first thing you wanna do, whether you're about to ride or you might be servicing the vehicle, or, listen, I know you go out in the garage and you just look at it. I do the same thing. You just count it the same way. Do a walk around. You can admire it at the same time, but this is a really good thing to do. Walk around the vehicle. Obviously, first you can visually inspect things, but you also want to check if anything is loose or missing. Now, how do you do that? Give it a kick, right? Simple kick, give it a wiggle. But seriously though, I'd check the suspension arms down here where there's joints. Like if I'm moving the whole vehicle like this, that means it's pretty solid. The axle too. Axles can get loose, shocks. I mean, all the arms, the tie rod down there. You can, I almost just said it. You can actually see if you rock a vehicle, if the wheel bearing is needing to get replaced or if the lug nuts aren't on. So you can tell if stuff is loose. I mean, you'll know. But go around, check the whole vehicle. Once again, you're just admiring your ride. The next thing you need to check for when you're doing the walk around is also debris buildup. So let's see, where's a good spot, Eric? All these small crevices, they just attract, you know, mud up in there. I mean, the wheel well's no big deal. But as stuff collects over time, especially if you get in chunky mud or long grass and you start pulling grass off, it can collect like in these pivot points. You don't want grass in there. So just check the vehicle. I mean, give it a wash. We'll actually do a video on how to correctly wash your vehicle. Again, not rocket science. You don't want to pressure wash any of the joints because there's grease in there that needs to stay in there. So, you know, pressure wash the tires, you know, the top, whatever. All the gauges are good to go, but use more like a garden hose or something for the joints and then kind of scrub it. But debris buildup, definitely something you also want to watch out for. Okay, next thing is brakes. And you can do this on both machines the same way. I'll kind of show it on here. Basically, you want to make sure the brakes work. And the best way that we describe this is that they feel firm and confidence inspiring. So I would recommend, that feels about right. I'd recommend before you go on a ride or get some heavy use in, you know, at a very safe speed where you would otherwise roll to a stop safely, you know, roll forward a little bit, check the brakes. Okay, I stopped. You should have the same travel as you're normally used to in the brake lever or in the pedal, right, in a side-by-side. Make sure that the brakes are working properly. And again, check your owner's manual. You can also check the brake fluid and do some other things. Look in your owner's manual for that. Okay, talked about the brakes. Last thing to touch on is the lights. So, and we'll look over here first. I mean, let's see, this light is pretty clean. Not a big deal. You can tell, all right, I can visually see this light's okay. But over time, these lights start to pick up a little bit of mud, or maybe it's really dusty, right? Or at some point you can essentially totally cover up the light, which means you are not able to see and people aren't able to see you, which are both things that you need to have for a safe ride. So I would recommend, well, maybe I wouldn't recommend this, Eric. I always use my glove. I just like, unless it's just totally muddy, gross, and currently like still wet mud, just, you know, it's just little particles of sand at the end of the day. Just wipe them off. But I mean, if you're worried about scratching them with sand, or if you're worried about your gloves more than I am, for sure use a shop towel or rag. You know, at that point, you're probably doing a better job cleaning your machine than I do. So I'm sure your machine is already clean when you get to the trailhead, but definitely visually inspect that too. You want to make sure you are set to go and safe. Really, it's that simple. Walk around, check the vehicle. You know, it's pretty obvious if something is wrong, but make sure you're checking loose parts, all that good stuff, brakes, lights. And ultimately refer to your owner's manual for the actual proper setup for your vehicle. There's certainly differences for different machines, so make sure you're getting that right information. So there you go. You have just learned how to set up your brand new side-by-side or brand new ATV for your very first ride. We didn't do any riding today, but we had to get the vehicle set up right. Did we set them up before we already rode them? Yes, I promise we did. So don't worry about that. We also broke the belts in. We broke the belt in when that came in when we first started riding it. So break your belts in, set the vehicles up properly. It's gonna give you the most absolute fun. Last thing for you guys, these vehicles, let's get low, Eric. Come on,
All right.
come on down here. These vehicles are really, really cool. They look cool, they do really cool things, but they aren't that cool when they just sit in the garage. So please, we're begging you all, go out, ride your machines, have a ton of fun on them, get trained, and of course, come on back and check out the next Trail Talk video. So, thanks for hanging out, everyone. Oh, and one more thing, get out and ride this week. See ya.